Hello and welcome to Challenge Accepted, the podcast series that's tackling this amazing stat that a whopping 96.55% of all content gets zero engagement on Google. Possibly not because it's bad, but maybe because it's bland. And even the smartest campaigns fall flat if it sounds like everyone else. And that, we think, is where individuality comes in. Individuality is the spark that turns content from background noise into something hopefully people actually care about, something that's unmistakably you. Today, we're talking about individuality as the driver for engagement. How brave, consistent human people connect with your content. And we're joined by some fine individuals. See what I did there? Laura Pye, SVP of Marketing, Media and Creative at Paramount UK, who's led the transformation at Channel 5 into a unified 5 brand, bringing a fresh, confident and unapologetically human voice to one of Britain's most recognisable broadcasters. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
And as always, we have Ginny Follen, our resident behavioural scientist, to bring the psychology behind why individuality works. Hey, Ginny.
Hey, Luce. Hey, Laura. Hello.
I'm intrigued to find out what our biscuits are at the end, and if we manage to get our favourite sign language in this episode, Ginny. You'll have to watch and find out. So let's get into it then. Laura, when you think about individuality in content, what does it mean to you?
I think individuality as a term is really, really interesting, because I think often when someone says about being individual or, striving for individuality, lots of people assume that actually that means that you have to be really different. Like, you have to be, what is that point of difference? How are you going to stand apart and be separate from everybody else? And often that can take you to sort of a niche like area, if you like, in terms of, to stand apart and can minimize really the people that you're talking to. And in the world that we're in, what we want to do is actually talk to the masses. So I think individuality is really interesting as a term, because when I look at it from what we did, say for 5, is actually, well, how do we stand apart but talk to everyone? So how do we be different but not exclusive, not being different for different sake? So, it's a tricky one, I think, in terms of finding that sweet spot of what it actually means, depending on who you want to talk to.
Yeah, so individuality as an extension rather than as a limiter. Sometimes if you think about individual, you think of the one, but actually individuality should empower you to speak to the many as well.
Yeah, and I don't think it's one thing. It's never just one thing that makes you individual or brings that individuality. It's actually, for me, always looking at the whole. Like, so from a brand point of view, all of those things that go into that can then, inform that individuality in your approach, really, more than anything.
Ginny, what does individuality mean to us mere mortals, to us human being types?
Well, I was just going to jump in just from a marketing perspective, Laura, to say I completely agree with you. And in looking at all the different topics that we're discussing on this podcast series, one of them is originality. And I think being individual is more than being original. It isn't just being original, creative or different. It's about being you. It's that tone of voice, thought leadership, the brand, and listening to your customers and talking to them as people. So I completely agree with you. And I think it's that talking to them as people, the behavioural science aspect is the one that I would want to drill into, which is there's something called the self-concept theory, and we can use brands as like identity signals. So if they understand us or help us express who we are or who we want to be, there's an element of self-relevance. And if something is relevant to us, we are far more likely to pay attention to it and notice it and all the other lovely things that we want. So if you get that brand identity and individuality right and really tap into what your audience needs, then that for me is a really key psychological benefit.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to ask what the process was for you guys to have got your brand and your individuality message nailed. How did you come to that decision?
Yeah, well, I think it's exactly, you've just sort of outlined it beautifully there, Ginny, with the sort of really understanding who you are. And for us, the sort of having clarity on exactly who we are as a brand, what we stand for, who are we for, like who are we talking to, and really, really sort of for us redefining our actual positioning and our mission as a brand was really, really crucial for Five to be able to relaunch as this platform agnostic brand in a really, really cluttered marketplace as well. You know, look at entertainment brands. Content is everywhere. You can consume content on any platform, you know, not just from a PSB perspective and the competitive set there, but you've got, you know, SVODs, BVODs, AVODs, social platforms. Everybody is making content. It's everywhere. So from that individuality perspective, what we had to do is actually have real clarity around, well, who are we? What is our point of difference? Is there a point of difference? What do we want to be? All of those things. And the process for us was really interesting because actually what we did and what we were all really clear on was the things that we are not. So the starting point was not necessarily we are this, we are this, we are this, and, you know, this sort of big long list. The defining things were, well, what are we not? You know, we don't do this. And actually we behave like this and we don't do this. So, you know, for us, it was things like, well, we're quite, you know, we don't oversell, you know, the content is at the heart of everything that we do, and the brand and the content need to work hand in hand. So for us, the process was really about who do we want to talk to? And then how are we going to go out there and talk to them and show up as a really authentic brand? And I think everybody knows that Five has always had a brand perception issue. So we could see, you know, the ratings, the numbers, you know, people were consuming our content at huge engagement rates. But actually, from a brand point of view, there was a perception issue, and people still saw us as Channel 5 from 15 years ago and not the Five that we are today, and the breadth and depth of content that we have. And so often I'd have conversations with people where they would say, oh, you know what? I saw this amazing documentary with Michael Palin on BBC Two the other night. And I'd be like, no, that wasn't on BBC Two. It was on Fly. The same with our dramas. Someone would say, I watched this drama on Netflix. And I'd be like, oh, what is it? Oh, no, that's one of our shows. So we knew there was an appetite for our content, but people weren't associating it with our brand. And so there was a huge reappraisal job that we had to do to enable people to see us as a destination for content in a hugely cluttered marketplace.
Yeah.
And that process of really working out, we've got to put a stake in the ground of who we are so that we can go out and talk to people.
Build off it.
Yeah.
That mission, vision, purpose that you like, and building that, which you then referred to as led to not necessarily a change in who you are as a brand, but as how you behaved as a brand.
Yeah.
I think is key, because there's something called, and you use this word, the authenticity heuristic, where we intuitively, as human beings, can judge whether someone's being genuine, or I can't think what the opposite to genuine is.
Disingenuous.
Disingenuous, yeah, something like that, or like contrived. So as humans, we can feel that, like unconsciously. It's a heuristic. So if a brand has that mission, that vision, that purpose, and all of their behavior leads towards it, they're acting more like a human being and behaving more like a personality and an individual. And by feeling that authenticity, we're more likely to trust the brand.
I think it's, you know, that is exactly it. And one of the things that we did when we set out to sort of redefine our mission and our brand behaviors was that we wanted to ensure that wherever you interact with the brand, whatever touch point, it might be you're watching linear TV, it might be you're on the streaming platform, you might be on the app, that we show up in that way in all of our marketing and our tone of voice and all of those things. Because I think as well, more and more in a tech age and you know, a content age where there is content everywhere, that human connection and that showing up in that way is really, really important. And that is about individuality, I think, in terms of, you know, building a connection. You want to build a connection with your audience or your consumer, you know, there has to have some sort of human emotion interaction for consumers to trust you and want to interact with you or want to watch your content.
There's a line, isn't there, between individuality, ego, personality, where does individuality sometimes go too far and becomes sort of almost egotistical? How do you find the balance between being just an individual rather than it tipping into putting people off and becoming overconfident or too egotistical in your communications? Have you come across anything negative from a individuality point of view, or the sort of tone that you've taken to try and carve out that individuality?
I think it's a really interesting point, because it's about how far you go with something, isn't it? And how far do you push it? But I think if you keep at the heart of everything that you're doing, and what we did at Five was, at the heart of everything is our audience. These are people that we want to watch our content and enjoy our content, and we want to entertain them. And the process that I spoke about in terms of really defining who we're not really allowed us to sort of have an honesty as well about how we want to show up and who we want to talk to, so that it didn't tip into that it didn't tip into that being too, I feel like if you show up as a brand that you want to be, but there's no sort of, there's no depth to it.
Yep.
Consumers are wise to that.
It's shallow.
It feels corporate as
Yeah.
well. People
Yeah.
see through that. And actually the authenticity is the thing that really, really matters. And so having a real honesty around actually who we want to be and our tone of voice and all of those things really helped make sure that we didn't ever tip too far. I think the other thing that's really important is that internally, everybody was part of the process. As a team,
Yeah.
these are the people that day in, day out are living the brand, they're living the content. And so having everybody as part of that process and as part of that journey and how they feel about it and who they think we are was really, really important. It wasn't about going, we're going to go off for 2 months and work out the positioning. We're going to come back with our PowerPoint slide and everybody off you go.
And you're going to eat it because we're going to give it to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is who we are, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
This was about everybody being part of that process, because these are the people that are living it, and to the point around having a human reaction and showing up in a way that was really crucial.
Do you think that's where some brands and some content get it wrong, that they've not taken everybody on the journey and not everybody is therefore reflecting that content as it should be? Ginny, you're nodding vociferously as well.
Yeah, that made me jump to when you're creating a category. And if anyone's read that lovely book, Play Bigger, which is all about category creation, but it's basically you've got to take everyone on that journey, and all the fish need to swim in the same direction. And if somebody isn't on that journey, as cold as it sounds, you cut that fish loose, because you do need everyone to sing from the same hymn sheet. I'm throwing cliches out there, one up to the other. You do need to have everyone doing the same.
The having the real clear purpose and direction, I think, is the thing that really allows everyone to then go, right, I'm part of this, and I'm really clear on where we're going, and I'm really clear on my role within that, and I really want to help get there. And the other thing I think that sometimes that brands do, and I can only talk from a entertainment sector, is the content and the brand are inextricably linked. And I think, that is the crucial thing. And that comes back to that honesty point and that was really for Five, we wanted the content to be at the heart, and the brand is the piece that holds everything together.
Yeah.
And I think that's really
chicken and egg, brand or content, what comes first in people's minds?
Well, if I'm being really honest, if I was sitting here now, I would say, of course, the brand. Oh my goodness. But the truth is, especially in a world where their choice is endless, people are going to say, I'm going to watch X. Where is it? Where do I find it? And they're not going to say, well, I only watch content on this platform because of X, Y, and Z. The content is what people want. And that is why I feel that they are inextricably linked, because the brand is the piece that can hold it all together, and you can build trust, familiarity, all of the, you want to be in the consideration set of people when they're deciding, well, what on my way home, what am I going to watch tonight? I don't know. And actually there's so much choice. Maybe I need to let someone make a decision for me. And that world is also really important in going, I just know that if I turn on Five, I can get, a drama or a documentary, or all of those things. So I think people follow the content, but what the brand does is sort of that comfort blanket around it of knowing what you're going to get.
And we've all got that Netflix nausea of no, seen it, don't want to see it, no. And then before you know it, you spent 45 minutes and it's bedtime now. Let's call that a night.
That's where I don't know whether now's a good time to segue into, but that choice overload, which everyone's aware of and is a key aspect of why our brains have so many shortcuts in them, is a thing, and it's getting worse and worse as the onslaught of technology is thrown at us. That's why, like Netflix, and I'm sure Channel 5, you have choice architecture and how you position things on a page and the way things are positioned. For example, a pricing model, people don't go for either end. They tend to go for in the middle. People always tend to pick the default option. So there's all sorts of little tweaks you can do to reduce that choice overload. And one of the things behaviorally and psychologically is that's why personalization works so well, talking about individuality, because it reduces that cognitive load and makes things easier for the brain, which is why timely, right message, right person, right time, and the individuality of communication to individuals is so key and so important.
Yeah.
So individuality then maybe in a brand is what gives us confidence in the content. Maybe you need that strong brand personality to be a bit braver with the content you're putting out there. Maybe. Do we think that having a strong brand allows us to take more risks as content creators? Does it give us any permissions to push the envelope a little bit more if we've got that cushion of having a strong brand?
I think so, definitely. I think that what it does is it will give, sort of the seal of approval in a way, doesn't it? Like that quality marker. And you think, oh, okay, well, I look at this brand and I know that this will be of a certain standard and of a certain level. So I think it's really important, that's what I'm saying, they're linked, because you build the two together. But what the brand does is give you that sort of stamp and that quality seal of approval.
Yeah.
And I think it will absolutely allow content creators to take risks more in, branching out and different things. So since we've relaunched, we have got more into the world of sport. Now that's probably somewhere we might not have gone to previously.
Yeah, I think if you dust off the marketing education, we come back to that Ansoff's matrix of the new and existing products and new and existing markets. I think the strength in brand and the confidence in content gives you that permission to move into the new products, new markets, out of those sort of bottom left-hand quadrants. It might be bottom right-hand quadrants. I can't remember where's where on an Ansoff matrix. It's been at least a few years since I did my marketing degree, but Ansoff is what I think of with that content permission that you can look at. And culturally, you're saying that you kind of moved more into sport. That gives your team more license, more permission to think kind of outside of where they might have been limited before. Have you seen a change in the content that your team is creating or wants to create now that you've got this repositioning under your belt?
I think at 5, and this was part of the job that we were doing with the reappraisal and the content destination, 5 has always been incredibly diverse in terms of its content creation, and the library and the catalogue and the breadth and depth of content that we have is unbelievable. The problem we had is that people weren't associating that content with us. And so Ben Frau, my boss, who's chief content officer, his whole mantra is around listening to the audience. What do people want? What's out there in the zeitgeist? What sort of what are the stories that people want to hear? And it's incredible the way that he runs 5, in that people often say that we're run really similar to a newspaper because we're very reactive and we move really, really quickly, because if there's a story out there, we want to ensure that we're delivering you that story so that you can understand it from, whichever perspective you can, it could be a quick turnaround documentary, it could be a drama, all of those things. And that really comes back to sort of that listening, knowing who you're for and the audience, and then being able to make content for them. And then from a marketing point of view, in terms of the sort of creative teams and the creative license within that, absolutely it brings opportunity, because it means that you're, one day you might be working on the NFL and a huge launch campaign for that. The next, it's a new series of 22 Kids and Counting. It is, the diverse range is incredible, and which just brings with it huge creative opportunity for sort of marketing teams. It's really incredible.
And giving them ownership of that voice, making them kind of come on the journey with you. Psychologically, Ginny, what's going on when people have ownership, when they feel included in the conversation, that they can run with it, they feel empowered with it?
The only thing my brain can go to is, and I'm not sure if it's exactly relevant for this particular context, but as with everything in behavior, context matters, is it's what drives intrinsic motivation. And according to a theory called self-determination theory, it's competence, relatedness, and autonomy. So if you've got someone who's got the autonomy, as in they feel like they've got a level of effectiveness, so they're involved in a situation and they can change it, and then they've got a feeling of belonging, so they're part of a team that is infecting that change, and they feel able to do it, so they feel competent, then that drives an intrinsic motivation to behave. So that's where my brain first went.
And what was it?
Self-determination theory.
Self-determination theory. That's another new one for me to...
I use it a lot in managing teams.
I think it's really important that you allow people the space to be able to demonstrate, to succeed. You make sure the tools and everything is in the right place for them to be set for success, but really giving them the ownership. It really, really drives people. Within my teams, from what we put out and what we deliver, we're a really small but mighty team. And I feel like that is really as challenging as that can be when you're on a really tight deadline with no budget, as we all know. Marketing. There is something about the ability to all come together, to work on the same thing, and know that your role within that is hugely valuable and hugely important, and that ownership of everybody working to that same thing. But being able to give people autonomy, I think, is crucial.
Yeah. So lovely segue from autonomy then to the over automation things of AI. It's changing how content is made, the quantity, the quality, the speed. How do you protect individuality when automation can replace your style in seconds?
I find it fascinating because with it comes so many positives, from an efficiency point of view, from a data. Oh my goodness, we live through the data, the tracking, the metrics. That is how we know what we're doing is the right thing, and we keep going, or we pivot, or all of those things. So from that side of thing, I think, I think it is amazing. I think what I see in it though is the loss of that human connection and that emotional interaction.
I think there's been a rise in human-driven stories on television, radio. That's the content we're consuming seems to have a more human angle. You talk about 22 children and counting, that it feels like there's more. I don't know whether or not that started with Big Brother or what, but we seem to be interested in other people as well. We seem to like to know what other people are doing and how they act, Gogglebox and all that kind of content.
Yeah. It's a Channel 4 show, guys. So, what?
We'll edit this bit out, don't worry.
I think the human interaction thing is absolutely crucial. And when we set our mission is about lifting the lid on life and telling stories in surprising ways. And so because in the content, everything is grounded in a human story, and that does come from, yes, you might be watching, like 22 Kids and Counting, that is everyday life, but with a surprising twist to it. But it's still a human story. And back what we were talking about at the start, individual not being niche, it's actually about being really accessible and talk to the masses. This is about having the stories that people can relate to, that are relatable to them, regardless of genre. I think that is the stuff that resonates, and that's what drives engagement. That's what makes people think, actually, I'm invested in this. I can relate to this. This feels, or there's a warmth to it, or, all of those things. I think that is the stuff that really resonates and people connect with from a content point of view. But there is so much of it. What we do as a brand is we can be the filter, right? We can be you're going to get all of this stuff. It can, it's here.
Speaking of a Channel 5 show, Ben Fogle, New Lives in the Wild, love it. And that's because I'm like, I want that life. Everyone I watch, most of them don't have tech. And I don't know, I'm assuming it's a popular show because there's
really popular. And exactly that. But if you look at that is taking a human story. That is taking, often there's always the story of they left, their busy life in the city, and they've gone out. But again, it's that telling it in that sort of surprising way, but it's still relatable. Because I think
empathy is one of the traits we talk about in content, and I do think, especially in an AI era, which is what we're certainly heading towards, that empathy, that human angle remains, I think, a big factor. And authenticity, I think. Ginny, is there anything around authenticity, or have we covered that off with our disingenuous chat from earlier?
I'd say we've covered it off for the most part. It's around trust and emotional resonance, and our brains notice and pay attention to things that drive emotions. So authenticity, we can see, and AI isn't authentic. Like you say, we know intrinsically that AI is AI because we can notice that disconnect and it's not being authentic. And that would reduce trust in a brand if they see too much of that disconnect.
Yeah, and I think the authenticity piece shouldn't be underestimated, because I think, again, people, audiences, consumers, they see through it. And part of our thing was that if we wanted to shift perceptions of 5, we had to do that honestly and show up in that really true, authentic way, because people see through it. And then that trust piece was, one of our brand metrics. It is so crucial, because to be in someone's consideration set in terms of their viewing habits, and they need to trust you. They need to know what you stand for and what shows you've got, all of those things. So it's all linked, isn't it?
So here's the thing then. This episode is called Individuality. But in my mind, the more we're talking about this, I think individuality is actually authenticity. And that authenticity comes from knowing who you are as an individual. Do we need to rename this trait to authenticity? Controversial.
Very controversial.
I can hear my creative team flinching in the background.
I think there's a difference. There is a slight difference. To be individual, you need to be authentic for your individuality to work. But I still think you could be authentic, but just like everyone else. And it wouldn't stand out as so much. So you need that consistency and the authenticity, but you need that slight difference. And it's not an everyday difference. It's just a difference in who you are. So I would say you need both.
I completely agree. And I think as well, no brand is ever going to go out there and say, we're not authentic. Every brand says, we're an authentic brand. What is how you show up that is the authenticity piece of it for me, I think. So everyone will probably have it on their PowerPoint slide, but are you really living it? Are you doing that when you're showing up in the stories you're telling, or or whatever your brand is? Because I think it's an interesting one, that it is about behavior.
Authentic is one of the words that people slap up on the wall, isn't it? That
always
accumulates dust.
We because obviously it comes up, and one of the things that we were like, actually, you know what, we're going to be so strict around this and make sure in terms of those who we are and those behaviors, really resonate and aren't just a word on a wall. And what we decided is exactly that. Authenticity is how you show up. It's not the word on the PowerPoint.
Not the word on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So we've discussed individuality a bit. If we were giving people advice on how to help their content feel more individualistic tomorrow, where could they start? What would your advice be, Laura?
Oh, wow. I mean, the one thing I think about individuality is it's not one thing, and it's not one thing in that there's one thing that, like to the point we made at the beginning, that you are, and therefore it sort of minimizes who you are. I think it is about the different layers within that and how you bring it all together. And I think it's never a one and done. So I think the thing about individuality and about creating that and to the authenticity point is it's about going out. It's the world of it. It's never a one and done. It's that always on, and it's that always showing up in that way rather than just one thing. So my advice would be to think about it as more than one thing or more than one moment. Our campaign that we did for the relaunch, yes, there was a big launch campaign, but then it was like, right, the rest of the year, there's this complete always on moment then that, because it's always about continuing that.
The repetition.
Yeah. And building the world around it, I think, as well.
Ginny, what's your advice?
I'm not going to be very individual in my advice because I was going to say pretty much along the lines of what Laura says. It was
great minds.
You exactly. Although isn't it something to do with if you continue that phrase, it's a negative. Great. It's not great minds think alike and mediocre minds never differ or something. It's something along those lines. It's not as good as it sounds.
I've obviously never got to the end of that sentence before.
Yeah.
That's enough. That's good for me. I'm done.
Yeah, it's making that deliberate choice, but keeping it consistent throughout. Like our brains look for patterns, but then they pay attention to what's novel and what's different. So that is kind of in line with that consistency in the brand, but that's a little bit different. So it does stand out a little bit.
I'd say do a voice audit or a self-diagnosis of sameness. Find 3 posts or emails or something that you've sent out recently and read it aloud in a quiet room or to yourself and listen to see if it sounds like someone else in your category. And if it even vaguely does, rewrite it, but give yourself permission just to rewrite it how you think it should be written, not how it has always been written, and just see where you end up with it from an authentic point of view of that this is what I wanted to say, and just see how far apart you are. And then if you choose to share that internally, then you can. But a voice audit, grab a couple of posts or things that you've done recently and read it aloud, especially if AI wrote it in the first place. That's always a biggie. So the big question of every one of these podcasts, other than when are you going to do your sign language word, is if individuality were a biscuit, what biscuit would it be and why? Laura, as our very special guest, I invite you to explain your biscuit choice.
Well, I'd like to put it out there that I just love all biscuits. So I'm finding this very difficult to pick.
Save the hard questions till the end, Laura.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got off easy
This is the butter. This is the most important. Well, is this a biscuit? Because I'm worried that I'm going to get told actually it's a chocolate bar. But
we're all friends here. Don't worry about it.
You can do your sign language. Well, I was thinking about a caramel wafer because to the layers point, there's lots of layers within that wafer.
Nice.
But the really clever thing is it's all covered in just a delicious casing, which is your cohesive brand all around it, which is the chocolate. So, but is a caramel wafer a biscuit?
It is today.
And maybe I've gone out of category.
No, I think you're right. I think it sits in the biscuit aisle at the supermarket.
Yeah, honestly, there you go. Mass appeal.
There we are. See, yes. Ginny, what's yours?
So I'm going to go with, and I got a shock when I ate one of these recently because I wasn't expecting it, those new chocolate digestives where they've got a layer of caramel between the chocolate and the biscuit.
they are lovely.
Because you've got your digestive that everyone knows and loves, and it's consistent, and then they've just got a little personal little twist on the top. I'm not going to say it's one of my favourite biscuits in the world, because when I eat a chocolate digestive, I want a chocolate digestive. But it's being individual, it's being consistent, but with a twist.
I'm going to go with something that you used to make at schools, those little individual shortbread fork biscuits.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Because they were never two the same, ever, but they all had the same stuff in them, but each one was individual. They're all compiled of the same thing. They're meant to be the same thing, but everyone was slightly different. Sometimes you'd make an absolutely yummy batch, and sometimes they were not so yummy.
Very good.
So I'm going to go with a fork biscuit. I'm careful how I say a fork. At the end there. So thank you both very much for joining us, and thanks for everyone for sticking with us today. Please subscribe to the channel and watch some of the other episodes if you've not caught up with them before. Laura, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. Ginny, thank you as always.
Thank you.
So that's hopefully wrapped up some information and some insights behind what we think about individuality. But remember, engagement is everything. Thanks very much. Until next time, folks. Bye.